Hello everyone and welcome back to Booster Seat. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Today we're working on 22RE Toyotas again. And what we're doing is a tutorial on a budget fix for some leaky cylinder head valves. I poured kerosene down the intake and exhaust ports, and it turns out that all my exhaust valves are leaking right around the valve heads and seats. It was pouring out into the combustion chamber like a sieve. So let's get this baby all torn apart and see what's going on in there. You can kind of see and hear how rough this thing's idling with these leaky cylinder head valves. It almost sounds just like a V8. Be sure to put your safety glasses on for this. And you're going to take a valve spring compressor like so. And what you're going to do is you're going to carefully make sure that you're not going to get into the valve cover sealing surface area and score that all up. Stick the compressor over the valve spring retainer. Make sure it's set nice, lined up. And then take the bottom side and center it on the head of the valve, making sure not to score the combustion chamber. So when everything looks good and everything's clear, you're going to carefully compress the spring. And then you're going to take these little valve keepers out, and they're tapered and the small end goes down. Set those aside. Then you're going to carefully release your spring pressure. And voila! Valve spring comes right out. Then we can take the valve and push out the bottom. And there we go. I'm going to repeat that for the other three valves. Here we have your Permatex valve grinding compound, available at just about any auto parts store. It's about $5. So we're going to go ahead and use this and grind these seats down and get these valves to seal really nice for us so it doesn't sound like a V8 4-cylinder. We're going to take our valve grinding compound. We're going to take a valve, and we're just going to put a little bit of this grinding material on the sealing surface of the valve here. Smear it around a little bit if you'd like, so you get a nice layer. And we're going to do that to all four valves. So now that you have your valves all coated on the seating surface with the grinding compound, and you want to keep these numbered, you're going to stick them back in the valve guides. Make sure you put a little oil on the valve stem. It helps when you go to turn them, to grind them. Then you're going to take your cylinder head, and I recommend propping it up so you can sit down and stick a drill on the valve stems, and that way you can turn them. It's also a good idea before we grind these valves in the seats and the cylinder head, when you get them pushed through the cylinder head and then through the valve stem seal, what you'd want to do is take a little piece of masking tape like so, and when it's in the cylinder head, you just want to wrap the very end of the valve here on the valve stem, and then what that's going to do is protect the end of the valve from the chuck on the drill scoring it and biting into it, and that could potentially cause your valve stem seal, when you push it back out of the cylinder head, it can cut that valve stem seal and then you'll have a leak. So it's a good idea to do this. Tighten the chuck down on the very head of the valve stem very carefully. You don't want to score it up because otherwise you're going to tear up your valve stem seal. And I already went clockwise on these, so we're going to go counterclockwise this time around. And you want to go in and out because that's going to cool the valve every now and then. Here's a view from the other side to show you. And you can see every time I lift back up, the grinding compound works back down into the seat and allows me to grind up the coarser material, smoothing out the seat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this to all 4 valves. I'll probably do one more lap going clockwise, and then we'll check it out from there. But as you can see, and as I found, is number 1 and 2 valve seats and valves leaked pretty good, and you can see why. It's not seating all the way around. So here's a good example of a very poor valve sealing surface. You can see how chewed up this one is. This actually had a piece of metal go through the cylinder and finally worked its way out, but that'll chew up a valve and a seat pretty good, and that can cause misfires or rough idle. So what I did is I ended up doing an additional clockwise and counterclockwise, applying more valve grinding compound each time, and check it out. That looks like a good sealing surface to me. It looks like we're gonna have some pretty good compression this time around. Another example, here's the valves that I ended up redoing the seats with. Very nice sealing surface all the way around. That's what you're going for. So what we're going to do is start getting it together and give it a leak test. I always like to apply a little engine oil on the valve stems. It's a good idea before you pop them back in the cylinder head. And then always be sure to check your valve guides and make sure they're clean and clear of any debris. You don't want a valve hanging open because something got stuck in there and seized your valve up, and next thing you know your piston hits the valve and drops the valve, and next thing you know your either expensive or inexpensive junkyard motor is trashed. Now that all the valves are back in the head, it's a good idea to check the movement on your valves, make sure they're free, nothing holding them up. It's also a good idea to make sure that all your valve stem seals are still on. And that your valve spring shims are still on the cylinder head as well, so the cylinder head doesn't get tore up by the springs. What we're going to do now is install the valve springs and valve spring retainers. And how we do that is stick them in place as best you can. Then you're going to take a valve spring compressor like so. Be careful not to scratch the cylinder head. Get your keeper in the compressor nice. Make sure you're not going to interfere with the valve cover surface. And then carefully guide the bottom end center with the valve. And then carefully go ahead and compress your spring. It's always a good idea to have safety glasses on for this. Now we're going to take our valve spring keepers, stick them on the valve, and these can be a little tricky sometimes, especially getting them to go back in where they're supposed to. Sometimes a little grease can help. Yep. Okay, I've got them in now. So what I'm going to do is carefully release my spring compressor. And that is installed. So I've put some old gasoline in all the exhaust ports, and it's been in there for about 2 minutes now or so, and check her out. Would you just look at it? Would you just look at it? No more waterfalls onto my cardboard. I think that'll do. Wow, listen how good it idles now. I'd call that a success. Sweet! Thanks for watching.